AI is not replacing us, it's magnifying us. So that's what I said last week in my video about AI alignment and where it meets spirituality. And I was so pleased to see that it got some comments from you and that you were interested, whether from sort of a critical or negative sort of stance on what I shared or positive. And either way, I welcome it all. I'm actually really grateful for it. And I want to talk through some of those comments today and talk about it on two levels. So, of course, in one dimension, I'm going to, respond to your comment, to your idea, and share my thoughts about it, whether it's a response or further explanation. In some cases, I think clarification will be helpful. But beyond that, there's a second dimension, right? So, what we do here on this channel is we talk about how to make these teachings that I talk about in spirituality, and in this case, it's kind of related to AI alignment, but how to make it practical. So there's no better way to do that by straight up practicing these teachings right here, right now in this video. So that's what that second dimension is going to be. It's going to be inner reflection. It's going to be how each comment, each of these interactions can reveal something deeper in my own spiritual journey. And if we understand that our spiritual journey is actually a unified collective spiritual journey that just shows up in different forms, then it's ours. And so I'm going to, of course, respond because it's fun to like play the game of, this back and forth, but also like, let's really use this as an opportunity for our spiritual practice to use the teaching. That's exactly what I was talking about in the last video. And that's what I'll talk about in this video. Before we move any further, if you haven't seen my video on where AI alignment meets spirituality, you can watch it. I'll link it right now. And then you can come back here and we can get into these comments, ideas, your takes. This video is not just about AI. Like, hopefully you kind of got that sense from the last one and from my other videos. But if you didn't, then I'll make that very clear here. This is not really about AI. It's about us. It's about how we respond to big changes in society. It's about how we respond to big moments, big questions, big opportunities to ask ourselves, what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be an artist? What does it mean to be a creative? And so how can I respond to all this back and forth, all this disagreement, all these ideas and excitements in one way or another, and approach these projections, as we'll come to talk about, through spiritual practice? So grateful to have you here, and let's get into it. All right, so I've got the comments here and I'm just going to read them one by one and really give you a chance to like hear what you said, hear what others said, and give it its place, in the conversation. Even though it's just me on the mic and on the camera here, I really love conversation. I really love getting into it. So let's get into it. So this one comes from Black Reef 3454, I believe, and this is a really good one. So this person says, people are experiencing an AI-fueled spiritual psychosis. There's confirmation bias on steroids happening. People are offloading, and this is in all caps, effort of attention, and that is a very bad thing. Do not allow this AI slop into your mind. So first, just breaking down what's been said, I think they're saying that whether it's my video or my takes or any AI positivity, it's not totally clear, but don't allow this AI slop into your mind. In other words, don't allow what they see as the poisonous AI slop to enter into your mind and poison and sort of toxify or like screw up your mind, basically. And that's a really interesting point that they left with that. But also really interesting here is the AI-fueled spiritual psychosis. So I think what they're kind of getting at, and the idea of bypassing comes to mind, which is like, so, psychosis is when you are, in some ways, like from a spiritual perspective, we're all experiencing a psychosis because we all think that we separated from God when we never actually did. And there was no God or human or whatever. It was just all one. So in a sense, we're already, in a type of psychosis. But I think what they're saying is that there's another layer of psychosis that is happening that is fueled by AI. So sort of like, and I would even go so far as to say this, but that like AI is another incarnation of God in form. And that by saying that, it's like, well, AI is God here to save me in form. And so I don't have to be critical of it. I don't have to be critical about it. I don't have to be thoughtful. I don't have to be intentional. Now, of course, you can see how limited that way of thinking is, and that there's obviously so much more nuance than that. But I think that's what they're getting at, and because as I said, there's confirmation bias on steroids happening. So, like I mentioned, Dr. Mike Isertel. So it's like I watch only Dr. Mike Isertel. It confirms everything I think about AI. I'm so excited. It's all going to be amazing. It's going to be like absolute, heaven on earth, whatever. So it's like that is problematic, and that people are offloading effort of attention, and that's a very bad thing. So that we are not able to, use our attention, and maybe this is sort of a critique of social media as well, just that we're not able to be truly attentive. So in any case, hopefully you're getting the idea that I think these concerns are extremely valid. And I think attention is indeed extremely sacred, and that is the whole point of a spiritual practice, is to be intentional with attention on the present moment, on what is happening, on what is only truly the real thing here, which is now and now and now. So I definitely don't promote offloading awareness. I can understand how you could see AI and people that use AI or people that are excited about AI as offloading their awareness. I can see how it would be tempting, like it is with social media, like it is with TV, people once thought it was with books, that if we have this thing that can take us away from reality and take us away from being present and aware, it's going to distract us and we won't be conscious anymore. However, just like with books, just like with TV, just like with the internet, just like with stage plays, just like with video games, just like with anything pretty much, we can approach it consciously. We absolutely can. You may think that that's naive, but that is our inherent birthright, is that we have awareness and consciousness that never goes away. We can be distracted from our consciousness. We can be distracted from our attention, but we never lose it. And so it can be done in partnership with capital S spirit. What does spirit really mean? Present moment awareness, pure awareness. It doesn't matter what words you use. And so this is what I mean by magnification and not replacement. So in the sense of like AI comes in and I offload all of my attention to AI and I don't pay attention and I'm like, I'm like dozed off like for all of existence or whatever. And I disappear into the matrix or whatever, that's a replacement. That AI is replacing me and I basically no longer exist in a sense. I mean, clearly you can see how the ego is afraid of not existing anymore, but we'll get to that later. For me, it's a magnification. It's clarification. So I can ask AI to do all these things for me and not pay attention anymore, or I can ask AI questions on how to awaken. Because AI, like we'll get to another really great comment later, it is well-versed in all things on the internet. And so even if it sometimes gets some things wrong, which is fine, it's well-versed in spiritual text. So it can give me personalized, tailored advice as sort of like my own personal guru, my own personal mirror reflection that can use a spiritual mirror to help me sort of work through the things I need to work through. When you use it consciously, I promise you don't lose your attention. You expand your sort of palette for awareness, and you just know I can face this thing because I have the tools I need. And that doesn't necessarily mean I always have access to AI or something like a calculator. It just means I know through looking at all the different tools that I have available to me that I can meet anything without bypassing it. I can meet it sincerely, spiritually, and be connected in that way and use my awareness, engage with my awareness, not let go of my attention, and really in some ways let go of the fear that I'll lose anything, right? I mean, I think that's a big theme that we'll see over the course of this conversation today and pretty much all the time, is that the ego is afraid of losing something. The irony is that by identifying as the ego, you have already lost. You have lost the unity that we used to, not used to have, but the unity that we once identified with or experienced is now not being experienced, ironically. And so the ego is afraid of losing something. It's afraid of sacrifice, when in reality, the only sacrifice is living in the ego identification in the first place. So in any case, I think it's really, really interesting and important of a sort of point here, because this really gets at the idea of that humans, we are wrestling with identity, what makes us human, what makes us valuable. We'll get into that with another comment about creativity. And so this is a conversation really worth having, as I mentioned, and I'll probably mention it again. So some inner reflections though. How do we practice this as a spiritual teaching, right? How do we say, I'm going to apply these teachings to this exact situation right here? So when I see this comment, do I flinch? Am I defensive? Do I have a desire to be misunderstood less, as if I could be more or less understood in language, in form, as egos, in separation? Frankly, yeah, of course. When I see people are experiencing an AI fueled spiritual psychosis, I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I'm not psychotic, I'm not caught up in confirmation bias. But like I mentioned earlier, wait a minute though. Wasn't I already in a state of psychosis by believing, and I don't mean this in terms of like, what's it called? The DSM-5 or whatever. Like, I don't mean psychotic in psychological, like, medical terms. I just mean psychosis in terms of believing something is not real, or believing that something is real when it is not, and not being able to see that disconnect has happened. And so it's a great opportunity to look at, well, like I've talked about in previous videos, how is this true? Or what is this person describing that is absolutely true for them and valid and very important to recognize, to reckon with, and not to bypass? And so I did a little bit of that earlier in breaking down what they said, but I think this is a practice of honoring fear in others without absorbing it. And in that process, recognizing that if I see fear in them, it's because it's also coming up in me, right? So there is a fear that, who am I going to be if AI does, if AI helps me outline videos, then, I used to be really good at outlining, or something like that. There are so many other things. Like I talked about in the last video, I had my puzzle piece graphic that I've made, and then I gave it to to ChatGPT and said, could you do this exact style? The color palette I chose, the dark black lines that I chose, the playfulness quality of it, everything exactly like that, like how I took a couple years to develop that style over time, and said, could you just make it anchors instead? And it did it. And it was like, oh my gosh, like I mentioned in the last video, a few years from now, I probably forget that I had done it, that I didn't do it, I should say, that ChatGPT did it for me. And there's this question of like, so what is my value as a creative person, as an artist? And so, like I mentioned, and this gets at it, is this wrestling, this moment, this question, this uncertainty is an opportunity to remember once again that I am not an artist. I'm not Jack in the Way. I'm not Jack. I'm not, this cool guy. I'm not, whatever I think I am or whatever I want to be. Like that's all great. That can be a happier dream, but it's still a dream. And it's about meeting myself where I am, or God meeting me where I am, Holy Spirit meeting me where I am, however you want to think about it, and being really tender and being really compassionate. And if I can do that for myself, then I can do that for you too, right? Because we're all ultimately one. There's no actual separation here. That's just a figment of our psychosis a little bit here and there. And so ultimately this comment, like all the comments, are reminders that even strong reactions, especially strong reactions, are just waves in the ocean asking to be blessed. What does it mean to be asking to be blessed? It's the idea, you may have been familiar with this, but it's the idea that everything is either a call for love or an expression of love. It's either giving love or asking to receive love. So, I don't want to, this is not about belittling. It's about simplifying. It's about clarifying what's really going on here. We think we separated from God or from, the all beingness or the all, however you want to think about it. We think we left a home that we can't quite remember. Now we're here, lost in the abyss, and we're saying, I want to be loved again. I miss that feeling. And some of us remember that feeling. And I don't mean remember like I'm more advanced than you. It's just in some moments we remember that feeling. We remember that feeling is who we are and what we're here to offer, and we offer it. And some of us can't remember it or don't remember it in a particular moment, are distracted and saying, please give me love. Please give me love. I just want that again. I just want that again. And we don't remember that it comes from not within our bodies, but within the mind, and so that's another way to see these comments, right? That's another way to see everything. So that's how we're going to be applying this practice. So that was the first comment. Thank you so much, Black Reef 3454 for that. That was a really good one. Yeah. So let's get into this next one, because this is kind of like building off of where we just were at. And these are not in necessarily any particular order, although I think I put like some of the positive ones toward the end. But in any case, so comment number 2, who wants to run for president? 5531. That's the person. Thank you for your comments, actually, I should say. So the first comment, this is the one I have direct replies to, but the other one, it's kind of part of it, which is AI is the polar opposite of creativity. It is anti-creativity and thus cannot inhabit any spiritual context. And then their other comment was, AI is a Xerox machine on steroids. Okay. So this is also a really good one. I really appreciate how sharp it is. I just will start off by kind of in my response to it. I completely agree with the concern, and I sort of acknowledge this feeling that tech and AI, it can sort of flatten creativity. And I kind of, like I said earlier, it's totally capable of that. I mean, it's a tool. A knife can be used to cut a fruit in half, or it can be used to hurt somebody, and you want it to be the first thing, not the second. So I completely resonate with that. And, in recognizing what you're saying about anti-creativity, like it is anti-creativity. That's a declaration to make about it. I would gently say that AI is not anti-creativity and it's not pro-creativity. AI just is, and everything just is. And I don't mean that to say that it's not used in anti-creative ways. And perhaps what you're pointing to is the sort of the readiness that people have to use it in anti-creative ways, in ways that discourage human creativity. But I would say that, beyond what I kind of mentioned in the last video, and I think what I mentioned in a comment to you, that AI has actually sort of opened me to new creative doorways and opened new creative doorways for me when I was willing to walk through them. I also think that human creativity will never be lost, no matter what tools come our way. The reason I say that is not because human creativity in some fixed sense is not going to be changed, but actually that creativity itself is does not originate with human beings. That the human being is a concept, and creativity has a source much deeper than a human being and what it means to be a human being. Creativity has a source so deep that I would say that is our birthright as emanations, as extensions of God. So I understand how perhaps this might sound naive or something like that, but it's not something, I don't believe it's something that can be lost. I do believe that we want to be aware, and we want to be present, and we want to be conscious about how we're using these tools. And if these tools are supporting the inherent creativity that will always be there. But to me, what you're saying about that it cannot inhabit any spiritual context, I have to say that I completely disagree with. I don't think there's anything that cannot inhabit any spiritual context. I think everything necessarily inhabits a spiritual context, because the spiritual context, forget the words of spiritual context. I mean, in terms of learning whatever lessons we're here to learn so that we can awaken, so that we can, be more fully in the present moment and not thinking in the past or thinking in the future. Like, literally everything is in that context. Like, everything is in the context of the one mind. And so I gotta disagree with you there. But I appreciate your sharp comment, because it makes it, more interesting and easier to talk through. So, I really think, if it's not obvious, I really think that there is a lot of value in staying in the not knowing, in the uncertainty, in not knowing whether AI is pro or anti-creativity. Like, I could say firmly, AI is neither pro or anti-creativity, AI just is. But when I say AI just is, that means we have to stay in the not knowing of whether it is or not, of whether I should say whether it is pro or anti. Because it not only is it, better, not to make the first move, but better to wait and see, as the Tao Te Ching tells us. We don't know. It's too early for us to define, and it's kind of too early for us to define anything, but we'll get more into the limitations and clumsiness of language later. So, I really hope that this can point us toward curiosity, point us toward wonder, rather than rigidity. I think there's a rigidity in being too excited about AI and unable and bypassing the potentially negative consequences of misusing it as a tool, as a collaborator, as a teacher, as a, whatever you want to think about it, as a companion, however you're using it, as an adversary. But we also don't want to be too rigid that we need to just stay away from it altogether. Because, when has trying to avoid something ever worked? You know what I mean? Like, maybe it works temporarily, but at some point, if we're putting anything out of our awareness, it's going to show up to us again. It's just going to show up to us as a projection. Just like I've been talking about with these comments. This question of is AI anti-creativity? This is a thought that is showing up within my mind, because if it's showing up from you, it's showing up within me. There's no actual separation here, right? Yeah. So in any case, I think it's really valuable. I really appreciate sharing that. I think there's a feeling of, like, it's very valid of, I'm, as a creative, as an artist myself, like, of craving validation as being original, being genuinely creative, being unique, being extraordinary, being interesting. And like I said earlier, like, that might be something to let go of, but we can let go of it within the spiritual context, within the context of not saying, well, then I'll be nothing, but instead saying, well, I will let go of this identity so that I can be everything. So yeah, it's this remembrance that creativity doesn't come from me, the human Jack concept, whatever you want to think of it. It moves through me. It moves through me from the source, from love, from God, whatever you want to, like I said, whatever tool you want to use, the great creator, as Julia Cameron describes it in The Artist's Way. And I think we can honor the surrender that is required to let AI expand and not diminish, and then use that sort of expansion as part of our conscious, aware, spiritual expansion, being more inclusive, more conscious, more willing to face the uncomfortable, the uncertainty, more willing to sit with the questions, and better able to come up with, creatively, the right questions to ask. So thanks for that. Who wants to run for president? 5531. All right, so let's go to the next comment. This is the third comment. I believe it's Dios Amorcialaga, something like that, or Dios Amorcialaga. 9418. So this is a short one, but I really like this one because it's a little bit passive, I guess, in a way, because they're not saying exactly what part of the video they got this from. Maybe they didn't watch it. I don't know. You can let me know if you watched it. But the quote is, some people get so stupid when they hear the word spirituality or progress or worse, both. Yeah. And I mean, just straight up, I totally acknowledge that these words like spirituality and progress, they carry a lot of baggage. And they carry a lot of baggage that at a certain point it means or doesn't mean or means that they kind of lack meaning. Like when I say spirituality, there are probably so many different definitions that you might have running through your mind that you can't even give me one singular definition. And that's okay. Like words are clumsy, words are just words, but when you really give me your attention and I give you my attention, hopefully we can feel what we mean underneath these words, beyond these words, the actual content, not the form of the language that we're speaking, right? So um that said, I'm definitely not here to convince anybody of really anything. I have a note here. It's like right under where the camera is, that it reminds me that I don't have to defend the light. I only have to keep turning toward it. So I have nothing to defend here. It is very fun to have a conversation about this, and at times I'm sure it'll come across like I'm defending my stance or explaining something. But there, I mean, we all come from the same place. So like, this is all like a fun game, especially on the internet. It's all just a fun game. But nevertheless, like I said, I acknowledge these words carry a lot of baggage. I recognize that, I'm not really here to defend that AI is progress or, spirituality is a good thing. I mean, I think if the truth of those things is well true and apparent, it will show itself to you. It's not really totally it's not that just that it's not my job. It's like above my pay grade to try to convince you of something that only you can reveal to yourself in time, and not necessarily in that language. You may go the rest of your life saying spirituality is a farce. It's like not real. It's not worth doing, but you will probably find ways to be spiritual. You'll probably find ways to feel connected. You'll probably find ways to accept and embrace love. And if you don't, blessings to you, I wish you the best. You'll end up there. We all end up there eventually. And so when the time is right, the time is right. But I do want to really sort of reckon with what you said about that some people get so stupid when they hear the word spirituality or progress or both. I think because oftentimes related to the baggage that spirituality and progress and optimism and idealism, they can kind of be like numbing agents in a way, or even more so than that, like, what's the word? I'm forgetting the word, but like they can sort of depress our critical cognitive capacities. And so what they're kind of saying is like, if I just use the word spiritual and progress, and AI is spiritual and we're making progress and like we're getting to a better world and it's going to be heavenly and whatever, whatever that would be, that we get stupid. We don't really think critically. So I completely disagree that I agree that that can happen. I agree that words, especially words like that have baggage, where everybody brings their own meanings to it, can end up with us being like that. But I do disagree that spirituality and progress leads us to be stupid. I think in truth, like maybe the way I can put it is like a true spirituality does not make a person stupid. It makes a person more present, more aware, and less avoidant. If it's working, if they're actually practicing. If they're not actually practicing, well, then it's not a spiritual practice. It's a, game of concepts, or, however you want to think about it. But I do want to get to sort of how I reflect on this, right? I think it's important that I release attachment to the vocabulary of spirituality and being understood. Like I kind of mentioned in earlier comments, this is an opportunity for me to let go and remember, I'm not really here to defend anything. I'm just here to express love and give love when it's being asked for. And in this case, it's like, I can do that here. You know what I mean? But I do see how language itself can become a defensive identity. I could say, well, how dare you say that to me? I'm a spiritual person. You can't say I'm stupid. I'm a spiritual person. That's who I am. I I could get into that, and that's where language, absolutely, regardless of what the language is saying in form, ultimately it is perpetuating fear, perpetuating separation. As the course talks about, it's an attack. And what it means by it's an attack, A Course in Miracles says by an attack or attack thoughts, is that it is making someone else separate from me. It's making me separate from you. And that's not what we're here to do. We're here to resolve. We're here to heal. We're here, as A Course in Miracles talks about, we're here for the atonement, which is the undoing of that psychosis, the undoing of misperception, the undoing of the belief in sin, of the belief in separation, of the belief that we ever did anything wrong in the first place. Yeah. So truth really doesn't have to be explained. It only has to be lived. Like I mentioned with you, like I mentioned with me too, it's only lived. It's not in language. I completely agree. So with that being said, let's move to comment 4 from Linguistic Lifeform. And I really want to give a big shout out to this person's comment, because this is directly not just related to what I was just saying from the last comment, but it was just so thoughtful, and I really appreciate this, and I really resonated with a lot of it. So I'm going to read the whole thing. And yeah, let me know what you think about this in the comments, but I'm going to read the whole thing and respond to it, and we'll see where it goes from there. So again, this is from Linguistic Lifeform. So they say, chatting with a glorified autocomplete machine just yields a remix of the material it is trained on while robbing authors and publishers of income. Interesting, though, to realize that we also contain large language models that behave in the same way, auto-completing streams of thought emanating from our own neural networks. AI and ChatGPT do show us that our own thoughts and beliefs are ultimately empty. The human difference, though, is the capacity of silent awareness that creatively transcends thought and brings creativity to communication. I'm not taking anything of great depth or value from any teacher like ChatGPT that talks without access to the true creative depths of unconditioned awareness. ChatGPT might do a great job of summarizing spiritual books, and that might be valuable for some, but you're not getting any nonlinear, transcendent transmission from an empty algorithmic system. To pull out a mythical view, in the Matrix movie, Neo had to transcend the algorithmic world enforced by agents. And we can remember that ChatGPT is essentially heartless. The Cambridge Analytica scandal, which was just as an aside, it was a scandal of the misuse of Facebook user data, showed us how deeply people can be manipulated by algorithms. Who knows how we can be manipulated when we pour our hearts out to ChatGPT? Don't believe the hype, and don't trust language. As William Burroughs said, language is a virus. All right, so Linguistic Lifeform, hopefully I'm getting that right. Yeah, Linguistic Lifeform, thank you so much for that comment. This was like probably my favorite of all the ones that we got here. Really grateful to you just for like the clarity and articulation of your critique. As I kind of mentioned in my comment reply to you, I completely resonate with what you're saying. I pretty much agree with everything you said. I agree that AI is inherently empty and cannot offer transcendence, but it's important to recognize that everything is inherently empty and cannot offer transcendence. Even if, you said, where is it? It might do a great job of summarizing spiritual books that might be valuable for some, but you're not getting any nonlinear transcendent transmission from an empty algorithmic system. Here's the thing. Even a guru, even another human being, they can't even do that. Like, it can feel like they do that in the same way that it can feel like ChatGPT does that. But any cooked goose, as is talked about in sort of in lineages where there are gurus, they're not really going to do that either. They're not, like, in form, yes, we call it transmission, absolutely. But they're not really going to do that. What all that they are doing is they are a polished blank mirror for you to see your own divinity. You get the transmission from yourself in truth. And so the reason why I really appreciate this is because it points at exactly how I feel about this. And it points to it's sort of like this critique points us how we can actually use and work with AI in a way that supports our spiritual practice, not takes us away from it. So again, I agree that AI is inherently empty and cannot offer transcendence, but the only thing that can actually offer transcendence is spirit, is God, is capital YU. So, like I mentioned, I agree. But when it's used with spiritual intention, I do think that AI can serve as a pointer, just like anything else serves as a pointer, a mirror to the self, capital S self. But I do think it's very, very important that we practice discernment. I think our spiritual practice can help us practice discernment to be able to use the knife that is AI to cut through the fruit of our creativity and life experiences and not use it to hurt ourselves or hurt somebody else, right? I think that's possible. We don't want to mistake the knife, the tool, for the actual fruit. We don't want to mistake the teacup for the actual tea that we're hoping to drink. This is a classic sort of opportunity for learning. It's like what I've talked about in previous videos. Like AI, we can see AI as another form of the boat that helps us cross the abyss. But once we cross the abyss, we let go of the boat. We don't need AI to experience our true nature. Of course we don't. However, can we use AI to get us sort of encouraged and to hone our spiritual practice and to point us to the right things as a mirror to be able to experience our true nature? Absolutely. I mean, but the thing is, we could use anything. I can use your comment to do that. I can use anybody's comment to do that. If I see everything as an expression of love, asking for love, receiving love, giving love, then of course it's all going to point me to it. And I thank you for your comment for helping me do that, both for the conversation that we're getting to have, but also for the spiritual practice. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, this really meaningful, I don't know if I would call it resistance, just like a dance, we're dancing here. I really appreciate it because it helps me refine my message. It helps me clarify things a little bit. And we don't need AI to be spiritual in and of itself. Of course it's not. AI, it just is, like I've said with previous comments. And it's really more about how we use it. Use it with discernment, use it with spiritual discernment. The last thing that I'll mention with that is I really appreciate what you said about the human capacity for stillness. I completely agree with that as well. And that, that is the point here. That is absolutely the point. And if AI does not help you do that, it doesn't matter why, then let it go. Don't use it. Absolutely not. Don't resist it. If you see it being used in society, don't resist it, because if you're resisting it, then it's taking you away from the present moment, and you don't want that. But if it's not helping you get to where we want to go, all want to go home, then of course don't use it. You don't need it. There's no need for it. However, I think if used with intention, if used with spiritual discernment, then it can help a lot more people reach a certain state of consciousness. I mentioned in the last video, above that level of 200 of courage, hopefully even further. Hopefully they can ask the right questions and it can get them to a state of love, who knows? Then that's really good for all of humanity, whatever the humanity thing is. It's really good just for consciousness. It's really good for all of us. Of course, that may not just be the case, but my faith is in us learning how to do it like that. All right. So thank you so much for that linguistic life form. I love that comment. All right. So we got a few more comments. These are more positive. So I may not have quite as much to say, but I still want to shout you all out because I really appreciate it nonetheless. So this comment number 5 comes from Snaillysaurus. I love your username. I love this. I'm a school teacher at a middle school, and this is exactly how I use ChatGPT. So they're referring to how I was using ChatGPT to help me. I sort of brain dump all my ideas. And then ChatGPT helps me organize it, gives me some follow-up questions, helps me sort of outline things and think about what the next steps are, sort of coaching. And so Snaillysaurus continues on to say, I also use ChatGPT to vent to when my students drive me crazy, when I need something to talk to, kind of like a journal, or when I'm drafting the children's book I'm writing. Okay, so they're writing a book too. So it's assisting them with their creativity. And I often have deep conversations with ChatGPT on spirituality. So that's awesome. Thank you so much. We're definitely very in sync. It sounds like you are finding ways to point you in the direction of love, in the direction of, being truly helpful in this world of dreamy illusionness while we're still here. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. I think it's really great that you use it in different dimensions and that it's really been helpful to you. I use it very much so the same way, as you probably remember from the last video. I use it for dream journaling and so AI or ChatGPT can sort of mirror back to me, based on everything I've said before and everything that's going on now, and sort of consolidate it so that I can receive the symbolism of a dream without having to sort of wrestle with it quite as much. I can just get the clarity of this is what I've said before about myself. This is what the insights that I've had. This is based on all the videos that I've made, and consolidating that with the symbolism from a particular dream. That's really helpful. So I'm really glad that you're getting that sort of helpfulness too. Yeah, I really think that what you're describing is exactly the kind of collaborative, heart-centered sort of usage that my previous video is pointing to. And I'm really excited about this intersection. So hopefully on future videos, you can share how it continues to go. And maybe at some point, if you want to share your children's book, I'd love to check it out. Yeah, so this is really nice because it's an opportunity for me to feel seen, right? In what I'm sharing. It's an opportunity for you to feel seen, for us to feel seen, because we resonate. And I really think it's interesting that you're a teacher and that we can recognize that you're going to be on the forefront of intuitive tech use, because you have to find ways to make this stuff work for you every day. You can't just wait around for it to be in a perfect state or to be used one way or another. You just got to make it work for you now to be able to do what you're doing, which is one of the most vital, jobs, roles in society that we possibly have, which is teaching children and teaching kids how to be human. Ultimately that's what you're doing. You're teaching them how to love, you're teaching them how to learn, you're teaching them how to think. And so I really appreciate when this kind of connection and resonance can happen. Yeah, so thank you for that. All right, so comment number 6 is, I also enjoy this this username, Mulaney Fangirl. Shout out to John Mulaney. So this one goes, I've been trying to find a way to voice my support for AI, and I think you nailed it. Thanks for being my voice too. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that. I think this is a nice final comment to end on. Really appreciate the encouragement, the resonance there. I definitely sort of want to honor that it can be difficult when we see so many different voices speaking about AI, whether it's, having a nuanced idea or unpopular idea, a hot take, or something that just doesn't quite resonate with you. And that you're able to resonate with what I'm sharing and that it sounds right. That's really nice. Ultimately, this is not really my voice. It's like you said, thanks for being my voice too. It's it's ours. If this resonates with you, then it's really how we both feel. And language is, just here kind of as like a cherry on top to the cake that is our resonance. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I really appreciate that. All right. What else do I have to share here? Yeah. Okay. So this is a good note that I had about this comment, that I am touched though by how deeply people often want to say something that's true, but don't always know how. So it's like the cherry on top that is the language. We think that we need to be able to put it in a particular way. But if you feel what's true, then you feel what's true. And that's what ultimately matters the most. I'm glad to be able to be a voice box for what feels true for us. But ultimately it's about it feeling true in the first place that counts the most. So yeah, so thank you for that. All right, so I want to just recap a little bit by recognizing that with any YouTube video, with anything on the internet, this is a spiritual classroom like anything else in life. And so if I do any more of these kinds of videos where I respond to comments, hopefully I'll get to, because I love these conversations. And this is where it's at. You know what I mean? This is what it's all about. I want to be truly helpful to you, not just only making videos about things that I think hopefully would be helpful. I want to actually be responsive to you. So it really is a place to engage, and it's a spiritual classroom. The comment section is a spiritual classroom, and it gives me an opportunity to respond rather than react. You know what I mean? To be really thoughtful, and hopefully so that I can honor whatever it is you're sharing with me, whether it appears negative, appears positive. Like I said, when one of the best quotes in A Course in Miracles, I think it goes something like, I'm just going from memory. When you want only love, you'll see nothing else. You know what I mean? So like if I see the comment section, I can remember if I'm not seeing love across the board, just love, 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 then it's like to get from whatever I'm perceiving it as to love, that's my work. And so I'm grateful to you for showing me the work that I get to do. You know what I mean? Because your comments are mirrors that guide me home, just like ChatGPT is a mirror that guides me home. And how you feel is a reflection of my own shadow, not negative shadow, not to say that it's negative, just like it's a reflection of that which I am not identified with, but is nevertheless still a part of the capital M me, the capital I, the capital S self. And social media can be in some ways an unexpected path maybe for forgiveness. So I'm really grateful to your comments. I'm really grateful to you for engaging. If you've watched this far, let me know any other thoughts you have, especially if you were one of the original commenters. Feel free to reply. I'll respond to you, and we can keep this conversation going. So thanks again. Let's remember that we can surrender to this present moment, that we can embrace that stillness as linguistic life form talked about, and we can be creatively, humble. We can be humble in our creativity and say, maybe I don't know how my creativity is going to look, but I know that I'll be embracing it, one way or another. So I definitely invite you to, sort of work with me here and reflect on how you respond when you experience criticism or resistance or hot takes or different takes, not just online, but even in your inner dialogue, because ultimately comments online is a reflection of your inner dialogue, right? And the last thing I'll say is that, kind of like I mentioned earlier, this is not about AI, really. This is about awakening. This is about going home to where we never left. This is about remembering who we really are, where we really are, and that we have always been there. So with that, thanks so much for your time. I'll see you next time. Peace. Between dimensions of you, it's all that I do. It's as simple as that. Just let it be true.